Hello everyone, Tactical Lich here, and welcome back to another Tides of Torment multiplayer battle. Finally, I have the chance to try out the Dreadmaw in multiplayer, but nope, you can't see it right now. It is buried underground, not even the debug camera can see it from, well, underground. So yeah, we just have to wait for it to pop up on the battlefield. For the army builds here, I'm playing as the Norscan army versus the High Elves, played by, once again, Hora del Saquio here, playing with the Silac 1i actually. It's played in reverse. Now I'm fighting this giant beastie. For the army builds here, a front line of Marauders, supported by a couple familiar warriors, the real backbone of this army here, supported by two more characters that gives them a bunch of buffs. Shrouding Miss, 10% missile resistance, plus the Ruinous Flesh, another 10% missile resistance and 23 armor, so 133 armor and 70% missile resistance. This is getting quite ridiculous with how tanky they can be against enemy missile fire. For the mobility here, we have some Skin Wolves armored version protecting a cheap and cheerful Great Shaman Sorcerer of Metal there, Searing Doom and Plague of Rust, plus some Kurgan Horsemen with great weapons in case we need to hack down some Dragon Princes. And with the double Dreadmaw Vanguard deployed, that's it for our Norscan army build. And for HDS High Elf army, a front line of Ship's Company with a couple Spearmen on the flanks there, a couple Lothern Seaguard at the back with an Oceanid unit, and of course Silac 1i, the Regiment of Renowned Murworm, with a few mobility units here, Illyrian Reavers and Dragon Princes. Leading the army is Alariel the Radiant with Earthblood, Star of Avalon, and Shield of Thorns. Also Staff of Avalon for extra power recharge to try and squeeze out more magic during the battle. So yeah, that's it for the army builds. Now let's get the battle started, as the Dreadmaw are already harassing the enemy backline. Not really doing any damage, but just being near the backline means that my opponent cannot just leave their archers unattended. Familiars have pushed forward. I don't care if they got shot by archers with their 70% missile resistance and heavy armor, but old Silac 1i is rushing in. I do need to pull them back a bit there. I don't want to just keep fighting against this anti-arch monster, but it seems like my units have been caught in melee, so I'll be turning around to take this fight with the Skin Wolf, with the Familiar Noble, debuffing the armor of Silac 1i with the armor sundering from the Familiars, and then I can probably do a bit better damage. At the same time, the Dreadmaws have surfaced, shutting down some of these Lothern Seaguard. The surfacing ability does some pretty nice AoE damage. The other one should pop up anytime, but I dropped the micro a bit there. Either way, the presence of the Dreadmaws forces the Lothern Seaguards to pull back while the Spears and Dragon Princess tries to attack the monster. Oceanids do not want to take the fight against the Familiars with their magic attacks, and the fact that the Oceanids themselves lack armor piercing. So the heavy armor, the buffed up armor on the Familiar Warriors will mitigate most of that damage. Lothern Seaguard shooting into the monster line, I don't really care about that. While over here, Dreadmaw have popped up in the back line and the Kurgan Horsemen are being committed. The problem is that the Dragon Princes counter-charge and they got obliterated in combat, while these Kurgan Horsemen got a slightly better engagement against the Illyrian Reavers, getting a flank on the enemy. At the same time, the Dreadmaw has been kind of left alone by the Lothern Seaguard. Instead, the Silac 1i tries to chew it up. I definitely need to relocate the Dreadmaw since all the optimal targets have left the area and the Dreadmaw can't give chase. While the front line, I am very much victorious against the Ship's Company with my heavy armored monster line with anti-infantry bonus, by the way. While over here, Searing Doom onto this cavalry blob who is trying to kill my Kurgan Horsemen and perhaps some of the Dreadmaw units as well. Another Dreadmaw popping up in this blob, doing some very minor damage to the retreating cavalry, while the other Dreadmaw that were here originally popped over here instead, just kind of doing some AoE damage, swapping positions and harassing the enemy. Over here, Oceanids fighting shoulder to shoulder with the Silac 1i once more, but the problem is they're fighting against Familiar Warriors with magic damage. Even the Skin Wolves are coming over from the far side, so this is definitely not a great fight for these magical monsters. Great Shaman Sorcerer though, pulling back the last second before charging the Murworm. Definitely a wise decision there. Skin Wolves will be piling in, plus a Plague of Rust upgraded and armor sundering from the Familiars. We're able to just nuke that armor on the Silac 1i down to an absolute 0 there, allowing the Skin Wolves to do a little bit more damage against this giant monster. While Searing Doom has routed off the Spears with some AoE damage, and the Familiars, the Familiar Noble, are able to be freed up and start piling on to Silac 1i. One Familiar Warrior has been left over here to fight the Oceanids. They're using their magical attacks to bypass that physical resistance, while my infantry finally being committed to battle. A couple of them are still very much being left in reserve, most of the fighting done by my monsters there. The Dread Maws have been hiding underground earlier. Now this one popped up doing some minor AoE damage to this cavalry blob. Still, some decent work there. Damage is damage, and I'll take that. While this one Dread Maw not really doing any damage as it is still underground, but the value of a Dread Maw isn't only from doing the damage, but also being there and always being a threat against the missiles of your opponent. And now they can't just stand there and start shooting. Instead, they'll have to constantly move away from the Dread Maw in fear that the Dread Maw will pop up and shut them down. On the far side, there are more cavalry piled onto the Dread Maw, but that is a trap, as it basically creates a perfect target for a Searing Doom there, and that routes off the Elaren Reavers, both of them, and also the Dragon Princes. Oceanids will be crumbling with that elemental instability due to fighting my Familiar Warriors, freeing them up once again, and they will be going after some different targets. Lofen Seaguard getting some chip shots onto the Dread Maw, doing some minor damage, so the Dread Maw will be dropping back into underground, waiting for another opportunity to pounce on its targets. While in the center here, the Select One Eye is being surrounded completely by a ton of Familiars, the Skin Wolves and the Familiar Noble. A lot of anti-large and also armor debuffs going on. Even the Plague of Rust upgraded has been activated. The Star of Avalon from Alaro is desperately keeping Select One Eye healthy there. Even some Dragon Princes regrouped, now recommitted to the fight, trying to get some rear charge, but I have committed a Familiar Warriors just to stop these Dragon Princes. We lack the armor piercing to quickly shock these Familiar Warriors into rout. So instead, Select One Eye will be rendered helpless in the middle of an enemy surround, routed even with almost half HP left, while the Dread Maws are still just disrupting the enemy missiles and making sure that they can't stand there idly and shoot. On the far side there, unfortunately, my Lord is routed by Elariel the Radiant, just being sent all the way to the edge of the battlefield, but the main fight has been won by my monsters there, the double melee characters and the Familiar Blob, successfully routing Select One Eye with the Skin Wolves chasing after it, making sure it can't just regenerate and return. On the far side, the Dread Maws have successfully break off those Lofen Seaguards. This Terror unit at only 1000 gold, marginally more expensive than the Manticore, comes in really handy in the late game, forcing enemies to rout earlier than usual. Select One Eye is being routed, and I have to capture point. All these High Elf troops are worn down and won't be much of a threat against my still rather healthy Familiar Warriors. The High Elves just don't have a lot of answers to my Familiar Warriors outside of the Select One Eye for this battle, who is still being chased all the way to the edge of the map by my Skin Wolves and Skin Wolf Werekin, making sure it can't come back even with healing support. Elara the Radiant is trying to come over and help out, but alas, that is not going to be enough there. Select One Eye will be seen off the battlefield. Dread Maw just staying above ground, trying to do some range damage against the opponents with its Toxic Spit. So the Lofen Seagull were able to do some chip damage against it, but that's basically it, as army losses hit, and the surviving Lofen Seagull will be sent into a rout. To be fair, the Dread Maws didn't do a whole lot of damage in this battle there. Most of the work were done by the Familiar Warriors, Skin Wolves, and the two characters here, the Skin Wolf Werekin, getting so much damage done against the Merworm. But the Dread Maw, they did disrupt the Lofen Seaguard, doing some nice AoE damage onto enemy blobs, both infantry and cavalry, and more importantly, forcing those Elaren Reavers and Dragon Princes to try and fight the Dread Maw, forming great blobs for my Searing Dooms to hit and getting some solid value for the Great Shaman Sorcerer. The rest of the army didn't do a whole lot there, mostly just carried by the monsters. The Kurgan Horsemen got killed pretty early due to my rather reckless use of these squishy cavalry. As for the High Elf army here, the Dragon Princes and Cavalry got hit by a few Searing Dooms, so taking quite a bit of damage from the enemy spells. The Oceanids got a very horrible fight against the Familiar Warriors, while Select One Eye did some decent work there, but unfortunately, there is just too many monstrous presence around it, constantly hitting the massive hitbox of this giant monster. It didn't receive a lot of support outside of the healing from Elariel, and was not able to carry the game this time. The rest of the army, the infantry, got smashed by those Familiars, and Elariel the Radiant, it was not really a damage-dealing character. So yeah, that's it for this battle here. GG to my opponent Hora, and we'll be back with more Tides of Torment content soon. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and keep an eye out for new videos. That's it for today, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.